very good opportunity if you believe, just like I said, that the spot looking good. Well, let's stay in the SEC, my man. Just like you talked a little bit about New Mexico State playing in the mountains, right? Versus Auburn. Auburn's laying -6.5 points, over under 133.5 in Salt Lake City, Utah. What do we have?
Well, first of all, this line was 7.5 to start. So we've seen a line move in the favor of New Mexico State. 59% of the bets on New Mexico State, 69% of the money on New Mexico State. I think both the public and the sharps like New Mexico State in this spot. Can't blame them. If it was still 7.5, I might bet New Mexico State in this one. I will say, you get down to 6, this thing might go to 5.5. If you get down in there, things change a little bit. There's a pretty big difference between 5.5 or 6 versus 7.5. Auburn, if they're going to let a team in the back door, it's going to be hard to do so if you only have 5.5 or 6 points. So I think that the line move has hurt New Mexico State's value quite a bit. I will say I think New Mexico State's a really balanced team. Really, really good on the glass. 8th in offensive rebounding percentage in the country. Auburn's defensive rebounding has been a problem this year. Auburn's underachieved this year for most of the year. Then they played a lot better here of late. Auburn is a high-volume threes team. They're going to shoot a lot of three-pointers. There can be a lot of variance there. Altitude, a clear positive for New Mexico State. This is a trendy underdog pick, though, and that certainly worries me. I think Chris Jans is a really good coach there for New Mexico State. New Mexico State is first in the country in bench minutes. I wanted to point that one out. That's pretty important here because you might get gassed a little bit quicker than you would in another location. Auburn, not a really deep team. So I guess if I had to pick this one, I would lean toward New Mexico State. I think this is a very difficult call, though, and I'm almost sure I won't have any money on this game.
Yeah, this line got pounded down a little bit. I thought it opened around 8 and it's down to 6.5. Was that about right?
And 7.5 was the Chris Open, the bookmaker open. So I think there might have been some 8s at some of the other offshores. The 6 is the number at a lot of the books now, so it's definitely got hit down. You know
what's funny? This was my 5-12 upset because I'm not picking Wisconsin's upset. But the reason is because this is the least one probably picked here. But that doesn't, and I thought I was going to bet it, but I'm not, but now I'm not so sure after I started capping it. And I wanted a better number. This line, like you said, 7.5, 8, down to 6.5 or 6, 59% of the tickets on New Mexico State and 82% of the money from what I'm seeing, and I don't know why this is an early sharp side. I mean, maybe they think they're going to let down and it's the mountains, like you said, a little bit better for New Mexico State. But, the numbers that I run and any public power rating out there pretty much says that it should be about 6.5 or 7, right? It's not like, you're getting a big advantage moving a point or two off of that. So I didn't understand the line move. I wonder if it's a setup, but both teams are red hot. I mean, Auburn hasn't been the best road team. They shoot only 41.5% on the road, scoring 73.5, giving up 72.4. But they proved on the neutral court they can score. New Mexico State has been on a tear. They haven't lost since January 3rd. They haven't lost since pretty much 2018. Their schedule's been real easy, though, right? They shoot a nice 46.4% on the road. And they score about 77 points on the road, give up 66. So there's a big variance there. The only thing you can slam them is their schedule. But their only top 100 wins on KenPom are, if you look at the top 100 teams, are Utah Valley, and that's it. They pretty much lost bad against St. Mary's. They did keep up with Kansas. They only lost to 3 by Kansas when Kansas was healthy. So, I mean that's something to hang on here. But my numbers have this about 77 to 70.5. Auburn should win by about 6.5 points-ish on my raw numbers. So, I was going to give a little back for home field to New Mexico and for the location in the mountains and the letdown factor because, Bruce Pearl said this one was for Charles Barkley after he won the SEC championship. And that just screams letdown all over the place. But right now it's no play for me. I'm leaning New Mexico State plus 6.5. So I think we're in agreement right there. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I think we've covered that. Basically, this is a tough game. This one's right about on the number. I don't see any great value.
All right, let's move right on then. We have plenty more games here. Murray State versus Marquette. Marquette laying about 4.5 points. Over under is 149. This game is played in Hartford, Connecticut. This is another trendy dog, isn't it, Kyle?
This is absolutely another trendy dog. 65% of the bets on Murray State here, 51% of the money. So not everybody agrees there. But I have to say, right as we're talking, I see this line moving, and this one certainly intrigues me. I see a 3.5 at bookmaker. Marquette minus 3.5. That's getting pretty cheap, but that's tempting to me. I think that Marcus Howard's health is my question mark here. If I knew he were completely healthy, I'd bet Marquette, not even think about it. Howard's definitely been bothered by that wrist injury here lately. He missed a bunch of free throws in that Seton Hall game, which if you watch that game, anybody who watched that game, that was one of the most ridiculous games as far as the ref show that happened in the second half in that game. I think it was like 55 free throws in the second half alone, something like that. I could go off on a tangent here, so I'll try to cut it short, but I will say I really don't like watching games where it's just a parade to the free throw line. Let's watch some basketball. But Marquette's a team that lost 5 of their last 6. I think you could argue they were overseeded. Like you said, the non-conference is where they were so good, and Marquette has a high upside. What about the other side? What do we think about them? Murray State. Listen, Ja Morant is tremendous. He is really fun to watch. No doubt about that. I do have my concerns about the rest of Murray State's team, though. Murray State, very weak defensive rebounding. Marquette has to go off after their misses here. I think they should get many second chance points in this game. Murray State's strength of schedule, 272nd in the country. Marquette, 58th. So, pretty big difference there. And Murray State, when they're dominating teams like, Southeast Missouri State, teams like that in the OVC, that doesn't mean much when you go up against Marquette. I like Ja Morant. I like the fact that he's so fun to watch. I wouldn't bet Murray State here. I could only bet Marquette. Their recent form worries me a bit, but I can't take Murray State with only 4 points here. Definitely a trendy pick is Murray State here, but I don't think the Sharps are going to end up liking Murray State that much. And I will say, as far as the total, I would lean to the over in this game. Total is certainly what my specialty is. And I would say here, Murray State likes to play quick, not great on defense, especially against the good teams they've played. Murray State has some good defensive numbers against some weak offenses in that league. But I think when Murray State plays Marquette can get some open looks here. And then Murray State on offense, they're so explosive with Morant that I think they're going to be able to get their points against Marquette as well. So I lean toward Marquette and the over.
I'll tell you this. The big question is, how is Marcus Howard's wrist? He was fine 2 games ago against St. John's. He shot over 50%. Then all of a sudden he goes 1 for 15 against Seton Hall, man. And like you said, a ton of free throws at the end of that game. Bad finish to the year. Murray State hasn't lost since January. They certainly did get lucky in that Ohio Valley tournament against Jacksonville State, though, didn't they? And unfortunately, I had a small future on Jacksonville State there. Was ready to hedge that thing. And then the flagrant foul. Oh, my God. That was just some terrible officiating. But, you get that from time to time. Marquette's really a good shooting team on the road. 46.5% on the road, outscoring opponents by 2. Hard schedule this year. Very hard, from what I see. Future NBA prospect Ja Morant for Murray State. They shoot 48.8% on the road, outscoring opponents by over 10. But like you said, the rebounding, I'm not sure if it's there. And they don't have any top 100 wins until they beat Belmont in the tournament. Absolutely none. And early in the year, Belmont did beat them by 13 points. Ja Morant averages about 24 points per game. That's over double than their second best player, Shaq Buchanan, at 13. I mean, what's the formula here to beat this team? If you're a decent coach, if you're Woj, right? Yeah, what's the formula? You stop their best player. I mean, because if you double off on Morant, he's eventually going to get frustrated and force up some bad stuff. and just kind of pack the line down towards the paint a little bit. Don't let them get anything easy. I mean, we've seen it happen many times. Guys like Ethan Happ for Wisconsin getting double teamed, the Badgers losing because of it. You take that player out, this could actually be a possible blowout here. I have this game with raw numbers, about 4 points ish, 4.5. But if the coaching has anything to do with this, Marquette should win this game, and I'm sure that they know that they're against the trendy underdog as well. So I have a lean right now to Marquette. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I did want to say too that when Murray State beat Belmont in that final game, Belmont was out without their big man, their best big man. I think his name's Mazinski or something like that. Nick. So team that Belmont was playing shorthanded in that game. They beat them when they had everybody. Then Murray State comes back and beats them when Belmont doesn't have their best big man. So, I think Murray State still has stuff to prove to me. Morant doesn't. I mean, he's going to be a really good NBA player. I know that. But there's 4 other guys on the court too, and I would have to take Marquette -3.5 here.
You got Sam Hauser averaging 40% from 3, Joey Hauser 43.3% from 3. They can light it up as well, as we've seen before. So if this thing gets below 3, let's watch this thing. I'm gonna be on Marquette here, and I'm hoping that 3 is kind of a key number for me. So let's see if we can get to that 3, my man. St. Mary's versus Villanova. Villanova laying 5 points. Over under is 130.5. This game is in Hartford, Connecticut. What are your thoughts, Kyle?
Well, my first thought, let's see. First of all, the bets on this one are pretty much even. You got 46% of the bets on Nova, 54% of the bets on St. Mary's. Money 50-50. So we got nothing to go off of as far as sharp money here. I would take Villanova if I was taking this game. St. Mary's, great win against Gonzaga. If you watch that game, anybody who watched that St. Mary's and Gonzaga game, you have to wonder what happened to Gonzaga. I mean, that was a really, really confusing game. Gonzaga's offense that has been so great couldn't make a layup, couldn't do anything right. I put off the tweet right after that game. What did Gonzaga do in Vegas the night before? Because, that was just a wild showing there from Gonzaga. Scored 47 points for the offense that's so, so good. And then obviously there's the conspiracy theorists who say, well, the WCC wanted 2 teams in the tournament. And I'm not really a big conspiracy person, to be honest with you, but I couldn't blame somebody for saying that. It did look strange. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's what happened, but Gonzaga did have a really poor showing in that game. And I think St. Mary's being so far from home in this game, is really important, because you look at St. Mary's going all the way across the country here. Villanova, not that far of a trip for them. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is really close to Villanova, but it's certainly a lot closer to Villanova than it is St. Mary's. St. Mary's isn't going to have much of a fan base here. Jay Wright, like I said before, I think he's a top 5 coach in the country. They're not as talented as they've been in the past, but what's their talent level compared to St. Mary's? It's definitely better. I mean, there's no doubt Nova has the better talent here. If you were just going on raw power rating numbers, I don't think Villanova -5 is a great play. I do think the situation and the fact that St. Mary's just looked so good in their last game, they could even be a bit overconfident based on the way they just won that last game. Mm-hmm. Now they have a long break. Is that long break actually good for them? I don't know if it is or not. You think about the fact of how great you are for beating Gonzaga for that long. Nova runs through the Big East tournament, winning a bunch of close games. I wouldn't think that they would overlook this game. I like Villanova here.
No, I get it. It's pretty convenient. They get to play in a West Coast team 200 miles away from home. I did the mileage. St. Mary's is 2,994 miles away. So it's
like the trip.
But it really doesn't mean a passionate fan base won't travel. But man, the line suggests to me that Villanova's playing at home. Personally, if you run the numbers, it's not 5. Right. Both teams are within 5 spots from each other on Ken Pom. St. Mary's only lost to Gonzaga since January. And, they took care of them in the tournament. And like you said, it was That's not Gonzaga. Gonzaga blew this team out before. Villanova squeaked a couple close games, but they're very poised at the end. Villanova's a very good road team, shooting 44.8%, scoring 72